Hey, hello, how are you? This is a show for everyone else. Instead of going after top 1% of the world, we dedicate this podcast to celebrate the lives of the unsung heroes and self-made artists. Hi there, this is Fei Wu, and you're listening to the Feisworld podcast. Today on the show, we welcome Annette McDonald, who is a social service advocate and started the Access Family Services in New Jersey that provides shelters and transitioning homes to women and children who are victims of domestic violence. She's a single mom with limited resources, and she's been doing this for 18 years. Today, we share her incredible stories and those she helped along the way. But you've encountered so many real life examples in my book anyway, that you know just as much, and to interact with people who are going through that do you have any advice, or perhaps if people are listening to this and if they're going through some of these issues at the moment, like how to identify when there is a power control dynamic, or they are at the beginning of something?
Yeah, there are some things that we'd like to identify as red flags. If you have a friend, if a friend is with you and she's constantly saying, well, Faye, I can't come tonight. And she said it 10 times. She's never allowed to go out with you. She's being isolated from maybe her family, and you're seeing that. Or she never has any money to spend when you go out. There are different abusive tactics that abusers use, right? So the most you can do is, of course, not judge, or anyone who's listening is not judge that person. You might see her with a bruise on her face. She might be your coworker at work, and each time a phone rings and it's a time for her to go home, she's very nervous, right? Because he's checking the time when she leaves work. What time is she going to end up at home? She can't be 5 minutes late. And you might recognize that doesn't seem right. She's doing this. So I would recommend, if you're with someone, you just express concern. I noticed this is happening. It's a couple times. Would you mind if I ask you, are you okay? Are you sure? Is there something that I can do to help you? Because I'm concerned. Again, out of love. So those are some of the things. There's many different signs that you can identify and possibly ask someone if they're okay, or to let them know that you're concerned.
This is so important because, I almost feel like we never had a course in school, whether it's secondary school or college, a course on on self-protection, whether that is physically how to protect yourself. But some of these psychological barriers are even greater because it's really sneaky and you don't even see it coming. And it's kind of ingrained in kind of your part of your life. And a lot of people, I don't know whether when people grow up in a household where they've seen that, perhaps are almost mentally better prepared for it, or when most people haven't seen that and they have no way of protecting themselves or seeing this for others.
Right. So, and that's very, very important that you said that, because the psychological abuse and the manipulation, those are some of the most difficult things to prove, even in court when you're going for a restraining order. And you'd have many people just say it hurts more than the physical violence at times. I would hear, because the psychological piece never goes away. A bruise may, but the walking on eggshell, the feeling as though any move you make could be the wrong move at any time, that is powerful. And for someone to live with that and to have to live under those conditions, you can't imagine how they feel once they come into shelter. I often see women when they come into shelter after, I would say, a couple of days. As a matter of fact, I have one woman recently. She came into shelter, and I have to tell you, she's an older person. And I said to her, "Oh my goodness, Hattie, you look almost 20 years younger, and you've only been here 4 days?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, Annette, my best friend said I look 10 years younger." And so, and it doesn't necessarily mean that she was being physically battered, but the psychological abuse that she was going through and the manipulation and the threats to keep her outside or do something very sneaky and manipulative, as you said, was really weighing her down and aging her. So when we see the women and the children come in shelter and we're able to offer that little respite for them to get themselves together, it means the world. It really does.
And so I'm interested also in the entrepreneurial aspect of Access Family Services, because a lot of people think that, okay, I need to have a certain last name or I need to have a certain amount of wealth in order to contribute. In your case, you mentioned this is nearly 20 years ago. Not only that you weren't born into a family that simply gave you the wealth to do this, you're so scrappy. You didn't have a lot of support or even knowledge on your own. Like, how did you start?
Absolutely. What I was blessed with, and I should say that, is some knowledge from my years of doing this work and working towards becoming a domestic violence specialist, and understanding a little bit about failure, a lot about failure and trying. And you mentioned entrepreneurship. I think I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm a risk taker. I've done entrepreneurial things even from a teenager. However, when it came to doing this particular business, because it is a business, even though we say it's nonprofit, we have to buy toilet paper, we have to buy soap, we have to different things. The lights have to be kept on. So it is a business at the end of the day. However, when you're in a service-oriented business like this is, not everybody or anybody's out there that's going to say, "Oh, Annette, we hear you're starting a domestic violence program, so here's $1 million." As a matter of fact, Faye, I applied for $1 million. I did not get it to do a program. There was a gap in the county that we are in right now for housing. Housing is really important. You mentioned you worked with the homeless. It is so vitally important for the women who are leaving shelter to have a transitional space. And I thought maybe I will work on getting a transitional housing program. Turned out that was one of the most impossible thing to do with all of the variances that you needed, all of the approval from the different municipalities. It was very, very challenging. And I had raised some monies to help put up a transitional housing program because that's what I thought I was going to do. It didn't work out. And we did not get that grant. But I knew still that housing is very important. And there was still a gap in services for a shelter. And so after trying maybe about 4 times to try and get a specific transitional housing program and also a DV shelter, I decided to ask a realtor to help me get this place where I am right now. He turned me down actually about 3 times. I think the 4th time I went to him, I said, "Listen, you're going to help me get this place. We need to save lives. This is why I'm doing this." And he decided to help me. Prior to that, where the no money came into play, I had started just an outreach facility just to work with people in the community who need advocacy, where there are gaps in services, to help them find housing, to help them link to different services in the community. And that was just with a local church. So he offered me a space that I can work with the community from there. So we didn't have to pay the rent for that particular space, which was great. But I knew we were working towards a bigger vision, which is and was eventually what is now the shelter. And I mentioned to you the thrift shop and the entrepreneurial ideas that I come up with. And so one day I saw a homeless gentleman on the sidewalk. And the pastor of that particular church says, he gave me permission to use a space in the church to do like a rummage sale, to try to raise some monies to help pay the phone bill, because we needed money to pay the phone bill. We needed money to pay the light. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? I have no money. And so, but I do have a space. And if I utilize that, it can somehow help us to do rummage sales on the weekend. And this young man was sitting on a park bench right beside the church. And I walked past him one day and then looked back at him. And I said, hey, how are you? And he looked up at me and he said, I see you going in and out. Do you need any help? And I said, sure. Can you? And he was a homeless gentleman, and that's been sitting there for a while. And he, long story short, Faye, he helped bring bags in and out every weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to try to help us raise some monies to help with just saving for the day when we had the opportunity to open the shelter.
Hi there, this is Fei Wu, and you're listening to the Feisworld podcast. Today on the show, we welcome Annette McDonald, who is a social service advocate and started the Access Family Services in New Jersey that provides shelters and transitioning homes to women and children who are victims of domestic violence. She's a single mom with limited resources, and she's been doing this for 18 years. Today, we share her incredible stories and those she helped along the way. Oh my God, it's a uphill battle for sure. And I look at you, I can imagine the 18-year-old self that you probably would love shopping, dressing up, and I think most women certainly feel that way. I feel that way. And now you've found yourself in a business for nearly 20 years where I don't want to say there's no money to be found. I know people who choose to work. I know women who used to be an attorney, now working full-time for the homeless shelters here in Boston, and they love it. I can see her. I don't know how she does it. And I don't have such a deep relationship with her, but I know many women I know choose such career. How do you balance the two? Whether you have children, how your family react to this, because someone like you as a serial entrepreneur, you could make a lot of money elsewhere, many other ways, but doing this that consumes you 24/7, 365 days of the year.
Yeah. So the need is so great in our community for social services, period. For me, it's a great marriage, I like to think, between my entrepreneurial, visionary type of mind that I have. I have to shut it down. Of course, I have to shut it down sometimes. I get excited every day when I wake up knowing that I'm coming to help another human being. That keeps me going. But balance is so very important, especially for us entrepreneurs. You're one yourself. And so you mentioned balance, that sleep is really, really important. And I go to bed late at times. I don't even want to say I'm more morning person. I do what I have to do. I go home late. I have to wake up early. But I take care of myself internally, as you said, as we talked about earlier, in terms of trying to eat right and trying to create that balance. And knowing that no matter what, my family still is the most important thing that I have. Most important people are my 3 sons that I have in my life. And so there is that balance. And bringing them in to what I do and having them understand what I do is really, really important. And I started to do that while I was working at a couple different agencies over the last 18 years. I've had my children travel with me to Washington, D.C. to help advocate for VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act, and funding for programs in New Jersey to teach them a little bit about community and community building and service to others. I've had them help serve food at times. So for me, it's a little bit easier.
What was the transition like? Do you remember a time where maybe they were younger, like, Mom, can we just, I don't know, do something else, go see a movie or something, like perhaps their peers not doing what you were doing, to where they are today as adults? Like, what was that transition like, if you still recall?
Yeah, I'll tell you, with my younger one, not so much with the two older ones, but the younger one, oftentimes he's like, Mom, you're at the shelter, right? Again, let me guess. You're not on your way home, right? So I get that quite a bit. But the transition for the two older boys, it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as what I'm dealing with now with the 12-year-old, because he does require more of my time. For some reason, the older one had each other. The younger one is pretty much, it's him and I. And so he's like, I need to go here and I need to go. And Mom, you're at the shelter. But then they say, so when is the other event, Mom? Because I can get up there and I can speak and I can tell them that they need to support your organization.
Oh, I love it. So, make him get up there and speak. Yeah. I love these stories, because sometimes women and men feel like they need a whole structure to already be in place. They need to come from a certain background to do this. And you're a single mom, and
no, I'm going to say no. I feel like, there's this saying, build it and they'll come, but getting to build it is one thing. It comes from the strong belief that this is for social service workers, because there are many, and you've interviewed some, and they just know that this is what they need to do to help another human being. If you had asked me, I don't even know how many years ago, I probably would say, somebody, oh, you're going to end up doing building an organization that serves women and children, and you're going to be the founder, and you're going to have a domestic violence shelter with 15 beds. I would say, are you kidding me? Yeah, 40 years ago, possibly, when people were trying to save lives, and there was a movement many years ago to do that, but to put an organization together, to have a nonprofit within the last 4 years or so in our economic times is probably near impossible, right? But one thing that I'll tell you is, and again, it's that mindset, and I've had to do a lot of work as an entrepreneurial thinker with my mindset, to stay positive, to stay focused, despite all the odds against building and having this safe house. No matter what, I kept my eye on the prize, and the prize was helping families stay safe. Mm-hmm. And once I know that I was solid with what my vision and my mission was, I believe that the universe send people my way.
They do. It does. But I have to ask, since we have a few minutes left, about your real estate business, because I feel like that potentially is fueling into giving you the possibility to do what you do. So could you talk a little bit about that? And I think it's really smart investment on your part as well.
Yes. So I remember growing up with my mom, when I came to this country, she's always talked about owning property, and she never owned a piece of property then, but she's always talked about real estate and it being a really good investment. And my mom's name is Sylvia, by the way, and we actually named the shelter in her memory. She passed away last year. So the shelter is Sylvia's Place, dedicated to her. She's a survivor and an immigrant who helped so many people stay in her apartment and until they can get on their feet. There are many people that lived with us. But I decided to invest in real estate at a very, very young age. So you mentioned earlier about being 18 and shopping and loving the clothes and the shoes, which I love. And so I decided, at a very young age, at about 20, 21 or so, that I was going to save my money and invest in real estate. And that's what I did. So, yes, while many of my friends are wearing the fabulous stuff for X amount of dollars, I was saving and planning on investing. And I did buy my first property at about the age 22. And then I kept on finding ways to invest in others as well.
I assume you probably have multiple real estates, condos that you've purchased and
Yes, some failed and some didn't. That's the risk thing about being an entrepreneur, and you learn as you go along. I didn't necessarily have a teacher to teach me. I just took a chance, uh, and you do it just like you said. You've taken a chance, and you're doing your podcast, and you're an entrepreneur. You do your consulting business as well, and one but service. I feel like the service to others not only fuels me, but I see that and I hear that in your voice. You're using your podcast as a platform to empower people. And that's really, really awesome what you're doing.
I so appreciate that. And so if people want to help out, want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that? And the follow-up question is, what are some of the opportunities to get some people involved if they listen to this podcast?
So volunteerism is very key to helping many of our agencies in New Jersey, as it is key to helping our agency. This Access Family Services would not exist without the slew of volunteers that I have currently and have had that helped really build the shelter program. There was so much work, so much money involved. I had the Girl Scouts helping to get the shelter up and going as well. They can adopt a room. They can get on the website. We have afsnj.org if they would like to get on and make a donation or contribute, like I said, to painting, doing anything. They can contact me through the website and we can talk about how they can contribute. It's a great way to give back, really great way to give back.
Yeah. I love that. Annette, I so appreciate you. Thank you for your time. I absolutely love the conversation. It's an extension of our relationship, and our conversation prior to this is so beautiful. And
well, thank you. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for bringing awareness, and especially being October Domestic Violence.
Hi there, it's me again. I want to thank you very much for listening to this episode, and I hope you were able to learn a few things. If you enjoyed what you heard, it would be hugely helpful if you could subscribe to the Feisworld podcast. It literally takes seconds. If you're on your mobile phone, just search for Feisworld podcast in the podcast app on iPhone or an Android app such as Podcast Addict and click subscribe. All new episodes will be delivered to you automatically. Thanks so much for your support.